Hi, this is Lee from the Law School Toolbox and the Bar Exam Toolbox. Welcome back for another round of what is happening with the California Bar. What do we know? What do we don't know? It's just another week in paradise here in California. It's storming outside. It's very intense in Northern California right now.
Cyclone.
So,
luckily, we don't have any big bomb shells this week. Was that a really bad
no,
pun?
we don't.
Probably,
that was a super bad pun.
Anyway, we're a little loopy.
Anyway. So let's start with talking about what we've heard about the experiment. So for those of you who haven't heard all of our other updates, there was a bar exam experiment that happened on November 8th and 9th, where students were able to go sit for a 90-minute mock multiple choice exam, which is Kaplan's way of kind of testing some questions. And there's an opportunity to get up to 40-point bump on your scores. So a lot of people did participate in the experiment, and we've been talking to them. So Alison, what have we heard about the experiment?
Well, one thing I didn't know until I spoke with someone is before the experiment, they actually got sent a set of 25 practice questions, which are now publicly available. Everyone who's taking the California bar should probably go download them immediately and look at them. But, basically They look like MBE questions. Don't quote us on that with the NCBE, but they look like similar format. They've got a hypo, they've got 4 answer choices. You pick one of them. So this person I spoke with said that the questions seemed very similar to those, and he felt like they were actually pretty straightforward. Not a lot of ambiguity, just pretty basic sort of fundamental type questions. What have you heard?
Similar. I heard that it didn't feel very different. I think the folks I talked to had all taken the MBE, so they were all repeat takers. They were not surprised by what they saw. They said it didn't feel shockingly different, that it wasn't overly challenging, that it felt normal, I guess is maybe a way to say it. So for what that's worth, it does seem that the advice to prep for this, like it was the multiple choice from the MBE, from the National Conference of Bar Examiners, is still the best way to prep for it. When I went through those 25 questions, they are still testing nuances. So it's not like it's going to feel a lot easier.
Right.
You still need to practice those nuances because they are testing on some narrow areas of law.
So, I think it basically seemed kind of like the MBE. I was actually pretty interested. This person I spoke with took it remotely and was kind of explaining that process. I don't know if, their test center options, there's the remote option. One thing that was interesting is they actually had a live proctor who was kind of monitoring a group of students. And so that person walked them through kind of showing them, everything in the area. We haven't really gotten a lot of information about what's going to be allowed or not allowed. But at one point, I think he had to pull out his phone and do like a selfie view of the room. So there was kind of a lot. I talked to somebody else whose kid recently took the LSAT remotely, which sounded really intense, that they had to take everything out of her office. There could be literally nothing in the room, like block out the windows. This might be pretty intense if you're taking it remotely. Like you definitely want to check on what is allowed and like what you're going to be having to show and take out and that kind of thing.
I have heard that people are concerned about this. I've been talking to folks who are switching to taking it in one of the testing centers because they don't want to take on taking it remotely. And we remember from the COVID days of the bar exam.
Oh, well, that went
also so special. There were a lot of issues with remote testing. And so, if that's anxiety inducing to you, there are also possible tech problems, then you may want to consider trying to take it as a testing center. Although there's not a ton of information out there about where those are or how filled up they are. So we just all have to keep a mindset that we're all in the same boat. We're all learning this at the same time.
I did find the remote proctor kind of interesting. So I think that wasn't a COVID thing. Like COVID, they were really relying on like facial recognition and stuff that had a lot of problems, particularly for certain subgroups of people. Really problematic. So they seem to at least be trying to avoid that problem. And if, in this case, like somebody had a question, they could actually either interact with chat or they could interact actually auditorily. I guess the person was listening to all their people. So in one case, I think the mouse was like moving randomly, and stuff like that. And they just said, hey, this is happening. And somebody pushed a button. Oh, the other thing was they kind of took control of your computer for you, which was kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah. Which is
kind
of crazy.
You had to give them access and they went in and changed a bunch of settings. So it doesn't, I mean, ExamSoft was kind of the classic one before, but it sounds different from that. Maybe some improvements, maybe not, but definitely a different approach to remote monitoring.
Yeah. So if any of that sounds really stressful for you, you're you're going to need to explore your other options or just really prepare yourself that there is going to be this extra layer of getting set up and think about that as you prep because I think that period of getting it all set up could make somebody who is already anxious feel a bit more
Right. I mean, there's some
anxious.
argument it's like, oh, it'll be more comfortable if you're in your own house and that kind of thing. But if you're having to do all of this stuff to make the room that you're in like suitable and have somebody monitoring it, I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably a toss up which one's more horrible.
Yeah.
But definitely worth
True.
considering if you are close to a test center. It might make sense just to say, you know what, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to let them deal with all this stuff. And then it's not my problem if things fall apart.
Yeah. Other interesting thing when you go through and we read the latest and greatest FAQs, which I know I do for fun. I don't know that anyone watching this is reading them for fun. Periodically, I'm just like, what's new? Hey, California Bar Exam. Apparently, they're now going to let you have a whiteboard instead of scratch paper, which is also interesting. And then I started going down the rabbit hole of like, which whiteboard? It's a very specific size. What kind of whiteboard pens can I have? Do I have tiny pens, big pens? They're smelly. Like, I just started to really kind of go down the rabbit hole about the whiteboards. And then it's mentioned once in the FAQs and nowhere else.
Right. One thing that's curious is like, will the test center provide you a whiteboard or is that only a remote thing or there will you get paper? I don't know. Yeah, the ink, like the way that ink smells gives me a really bad headache. So I can definitely see that being triggering for people who have like sensitivities to smells and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
I know. It'd be like using a Sharpie for multiple hours. Like I couldn't do it.
No. I don't know if they make unscented versions of those, but I would definitely have to look into that because I would like have the worst headache by the end of that.
Yeah. So again, that's also very different and something you will need to practice with. So once we get those very hopefully detailed instructions from the bar about the whiteboard situation, then you will want to secure the whiteboard and practice with it because it's going to feel very different than scratch.
It's weird. I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's definitely, I feel like it's going to be a little weird.
It's going to be a little weird. Yeah. Other things that I've heard from folks was that taking it on a laptop, especially a smaller laptop, someone was telling me they took it on a 13-inch laptop, that the font of the question seemed very small and that there was a fatigue element to that. And this student was concerned what the performance test packet would look like on a 13-inch laptop. And so that also made me start thinking about when folks are practicing, and we talked about this some in the COVID days, of really trying to set up your machine so you're used to having this window that's not very big that has this packet of information and getting comfortable with that too.
Right, because I'm guessing there's probably not going to be any external keyboard, external mouse, external monitor. Like my whole setup would basically just be like, whoop, can't have any of that. And go back to typing on your little laptop screen and trying to do others. I mean, yeah, you got to figure out as soon as possible, when we know this information, what this is going to look like and then practice in that format. Yeah. And obviously, if you're taking it remotely or at a test center, you'd be doing the MBE or the MBE, sorry. That would be,
I mean, it's not BMB.
The California multiple choice questions, which are similar to the MBE on your computer. So that's actually a strong argument for getting something like Adaptibar or UWorld so that all of your practice is in that format. And my understanding, it's similar. You can highlight things, you can make notes, you can flag questions you want to go back to. All that stuff will be in the computer.
Yeah. Other interesting thing that came out of digging through some information is it seems like they're now going to allow handwriting. When I heard about what was discussed in the they had that call, that mysterious unrecorded call where they answered questions. Not all the questions, just some of the questions. They sounded like that handwriting may be totally being phased out, but it does sound like, based on some of the things that I'm reading, places that handwriting may be an option. Yeah. So that's just something I wanted to
talked to somebody who said that he had signed up to handwrite. I was like, well, you're probably going to want to confirm that. But as of now, this person thinks they're handwriting.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw it on Reddit. Does that make it true?
Did they cite to a source? I don't know.
They did. They took a
Okay,
screenshot
then
of
yes.
something.
If Reddit has a screenshot, I believe it.
Okay. The other thing that you were reminding me about was that they're not going to do 3-hour blocks of multiple choice questions
Right, it's gonna be
anymore.
90 minutes. And I'm not sure about the essays, but definitely I've seen that the other multiple choice are going to be 90 minutes. And I'm assuming that means you're probably not going to be able to take a break for those 90 minutes, but that's a guess.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. I was talking to someone about accommodations and the bar, and I was thinking about, this remote situation and possibly these different testing amounts of time. And for folks who, need to use the restroom maybe more frequently than somebody else, or they kind of need this ability to utilize those 3 hours in a different way, condensing the time and then also having this like proctor watching you, it's going to be tricky. You may end up needing to ask for accommodations that you hadn't considered before. So that's something I think you want to think through. You may not be allowed to get up and be out of the screen from the proctor, which means you couldn't go to the restroom.
Yeah.
And I think that could be an
I
issue
remember
for
that
some
being a
people.
problem in COVID era. Like people were like, well, we just like wanted me to sit there, like, and something's happening and like I need a bathroom.
Right. I've had friends who have thrown up
totally.
during the bar.
Tons of people I know have thrown up. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think that's also just something to be aware of. Maybe in a test center you'd have more flexibility. I don't know, but yeah,
I don't know.
I'm guessing remotely it's going to be like you have to stay in that room for those 90 minutes.
Yes. So, still a lot of unanswered questions, which is not great, folks, because it is the end of November and we still don't know the answers to a lot of these questions. If you have questions and you're having trouble getting the bar to answer them, I would really recommend you go talk to your law school and ask the law schools and the law school deans to reach out to the bar. I think they do have a little more sway, although they don't seem to care that much about what the deans are saying. They're just doing whatever they want. Anyway, but I think that you should pressure the school to get you some of these answers if the bar's not answering them for you, especially around these issues with accommodations. And like if you need to have information about exactly how the test is going to be administered, you need that information as soon as possible.
Because you can think of any number of situations where depending on how it plays out, someone may or may not need to ask for accommodations.
And are they going to shift deadlines for that because it's all new? I don't know. But your law schools are going to be the best advocate for you, I think, in this situation. So hopefully they have as much information as the bar is willing to give, or maybe a phone number.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm sure like
Maybe.
some of this stuff probably nobody's even really thought about in that much depth yet.
No, I don't think so. I mean, let's all remember that Kaplan was selling bar review programs in California just until a few weeks ago.
Well, at least we kind of, we have our 25 questions. People can take a look at those.
We do?
And, information is trickling out. And as soon as we have more stuff, we'll come back and talk to you about it again. So everyone has a great holiday. Take some time off. Maybe. Unless you're getting ready to study and working, in which case maybe not so much time off. But hey.
Maybe not. At least get a meal with family or friends and some pie. Or whatever your comfort food is. Take a walk, not in the weather that we're having outside in our deluge of rain, but try and get some fresh air, some vitamin D, even if you're sick.
Set yourself up for a successful December, because that's really when it's going to start.
Yes.
And if you have any questions, you can always reach out. We're happy to help. We'll talk to you about what might, be helpful for you, and we'll keep reading those facts so you don't have to.
We'll come back for the next installment of what we know and what we really don't know. It's going to be exciting.
Well, visit us at barexamtoolbox.com, and we'll see you soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please take a second to give us a like and leave a comment. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future content.